and Happy New Year. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. For those of you who are joining us today for the first time, the Library Speakers Consortium is a partnership of more than 350 library systems across the US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, with the goal of making author talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I am Brandon Adler, your moderator and host, in conversation with each of the amazing authors that you will hear from throughout our series. Today, I am so excited to host New York Times bestselling author Rebecca Serle as she talks to us about being a writer in general, but also about her most recent novels, including a preview of her forthcoming novel, Expiration Dates, out March 19th, if got that correct, Rebecca?
Nailed it. That's
perfect. It. So I know that everybody's excited to dive in, but before we begin, I need to kind of pause and give everybody that standard housekeeping information that keeps everything running smoothly. So we have compiled some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, but you can also submit questions throughout the talk by clicking that questions button that's below the live stream video. Keep in mind, there are a lot of you tuning in today, a lot of excited people to listen to Rebecca. So we will get to as many questions as time allows. Now, to formally introduce our guest for today. Rebecca Serle is the New York Times bestselling author of Expiration Dates, One Italian Summer, In 5 Years, of which she sold more than 1 million copies, The Dinner List, and the young adult novels The Edge of Falling and When You Were Mine. Serle also developed the hit TV adaptation Famous in Love, based on her YA series of the same name. She is a graduate of USC and the New School and lives in Los Angeles with her husband. Congratulations are in order for that too. You just got married, right?
I just got married. That's the first time that someone has read my bio with that included. So that's very special. Thank you, Brandon. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored and excited to be here and to chat with you tonight.
Likewise, we're super excited. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I guess I'm just going to dive right into why it is that we are graced, with your presence today. Laura wants to know what inspired you to start writing. So can you talk a little bit about your journey to becoming a writer?
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura. That's a great question. I always find it really interesting when people kind of come to writing later in life, because for me, being a writer is who I am. It's like, who are you? My name's Rebecca and I'm a writer. It's part of my DNA. And so I was, from a very young age, I was always writing. And I remember reading Wuthering Heights for the first time. And I was in 7th grade. And I remember thinking, I cannot believe that you can organize words on a page to make people feel something. Like, what an interesting thing to do. What an interesting way to spend your life. And so from that point on, I was always just like entering little writing competitions and going to poetry workshops and just sort of doing whatever was local and whatever allowed. And then I went to college and I studied English and creative writing, and I sold my first book. I think it'll be about 13 years ago, a book called When You Were Mine, which was a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet. It eventually became a movie called Rosalind, which came out last year. I think it's still on Hulu with Caitlin Dever. But anyway, I was always writing. I like to say I'm really lucky that this worked out because I have absolutely no other discernible skills. Like, I am good at nothing else. And I feel really lucky that I get to do it. I really love it. So.
Well, us readers are really lucky as well. So thank you for that. We always get a ton of questions about the publishing process as part of the journey, because I know that every author's publishing journey is pretty unique. And Tim is asking, can you briefly describe the process you had to go through to publish your first novel, and maybe even how it might be different now?
Absolutely. So I moved to New York after I graduated. I graduated from USC. That's where I went to undergrad. And I moved to New York, and I was getting my master's in creative writing at the New School, but I had to work. And so I had a few different jobs at the time. But one of them was that I was an editorial assistant at a literary agency that no longer exists. And I would read the slush pile. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it means it's all of the manuscripts that get submitted to agents that are not through a contract, that just sort of get submitted blind. And so I would read them, and I would read them to see if anything was interesting, or anything I thought that, you know, agents at the agency might like. And so the best piece of advice I got when I was getting my master's was finish your degree with a book. Like spend the 2 years that it takes to get this master's to learn how to actually write a completed novel, so you have a piece of material at the end. I did. That book will never see the light of day. It's a book called The Space Between, that is living in a drawer and deserves to stay there for all eternity. But shortly after, you know, I was in New York, and back then I think publishing really was this hub in New York. And I was lucky enough to get to live there. And I was lucky enough, it was a time in publishing where I could, you know, go out to Young Author Drinks Night, and I started meeting people, and I started just making some connections. And I also started figuring out how the industry worked through this job that I had. I think when I moved to New York, I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know that real people wrote books. I was like, I want to do something close to writing, but I couldn't imagine that I myself could be a novelist. I didn't even really know what that was and how you do it and who the players involved were. So it was a very important part of my process, understanding what an agent is and what an editor is and what a publisher is. Like, I didn't know any of this. And then I was very lucky. I wrote my first book about 2 years after that. And I knew my agent because I had done some work for her at the agency. And so I was able to submit to her, and she liked the book. And that's how I got published for the first time.
What a great story. That's it. I don't know why I'm echoing now. Can you hear that? Oh,
no, you sound good.
Okay, good. That's good. So, I know that there, especially just like the publishing process, there are a lot of different ways that writers and authors kind of come to the final copy of their work, what their process is. So Jerron would like to know, how do you organize your thoughts for a new story? Is it like, do you outline? What is your process for getting this, for getting these wonderful books together?
What is my process? My process, I think, is my process is in process right now, I guess is what I could say. So normally how it works for me is that I will have an idea, and for Expiration Dates, it's, you know, which is my new novel that comes out March 19th. It's okay, every time a woman meets a new man, she receives these slips of paper with his name and a number on it. And that number is the exact amount of time they will spend together. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about just like, what if you could know? What if you could know how long a relationship would last? How might that change things? And so I had this idea for a concept, and I was sort of turning on it, but I didn't really understand the why. Like, why is this story interesting? Why do I want to tell it? Who best to tell it? And I'll sort of spend, honestly, about 1.5 years in that space. I mean, with One Italian Summer, my last novel that came out, it's about a woman who gets to meet her mother when her mother is 30, and they spend the summer together as two young women. And I turned on that book, same thing, for about 1.5 years, until I really discovered, like, what is it about this story that really wants to be told? And for me, that thing happens, like, all of my books, I don't know if this will be forever, but all of my books up until this point have involved some kind of a twist. There's some kind of like midway thing that sort of like reverses on something that we think is true. And for me, that twist has really been the why of the book, like what the book is really capital A about. And so once I discover what that twist is, I write a book fairly quickly. I would say I draft the novel probably somewhere between 3 to 4 months. I'm currently drafting and working on a new book right now. And it's feeling a little muddy and a little murky as I make my way through it. But I tend to draft quickly, and you know, my advice is always, I think it works well to draft quickly. You know, for me, it's always been hard. I know people write books over the course of years, which I always really greatly admire. I think they probably have a lot more intention than I do about my books, but I find it much easier to just stay in step with a story. If I get too far out of it, if I spend too many weeks out of the book, I find it really challenging to come back to the story and to reorient myself. Okay, like, what am I trying to say? Have I said this before? What is actually her relationship with her dad? I really find it's much easier to stay in step. And so I would say the thinking process of my books is quite long and the writing process is quite short. That was very long-winded. I'm sorry. I hope I
No,
answered that.
you did. It was very, very helpful. So not only do you include magical realism in your books, but also in your writing process.
Mhm.
3 to 4 months. Are you kidding me? That's insane.
It's really, the trick is, and not to get down to, sort of brass tacks right now, but I'm going to. You think about it, my books are fairly short. They're about 60,000 to 65,000 words. And if you write 1,000 words a day, like, you're really only talking about 2 months. Like, you should actually be able to draft a book fairly quickly. Now, the editing process is a whole other thing. We like to say, like, get it written, don't get it right. So just get it on the page and then figure out the edit from there. But it's not hard to draft a book quickly if you just set a word goal and stick to it.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I'm going to remember that. So Amira is saying, are there differences in how you approach your preparation, your research, and your writing for love stories versus your young adult literature?
Oh, that's a good question. For my research, no. I mean, I think the research really has to do more with what the book is, like, what the book is about. I had a young adult book series called Famous in Love, and it was about young Hollywood. It was about movie stars. And so that research was really about, like, sort of like the nuts and bolts of set and production and what that looks like. And then my adult novels, I mean, I don't know if it's just that I'm actually quite lazy, but I don't really research that much. I like to research up until a point that I can write with confidence, and everything after that is unnecessary. So, because ultimately I'm not telling a story about, a neurosurgeon. I'm telling a story about a woman named Bethany. So I need to research up until a point that I can write, like, I can write with confidence, and I feel like I can write this character the way she deserves to be written. And after that, I don't really research too much. But in the vein of sort of young adult versus adult novels, I think that, I sold my first book when I was very young. I was 24 years old. I felt really close to the teen experience. I was a late bloomer. I was actually going through my first heartbreak at the time. And so writing young adult just felt really honest. It felt where my voice belonged. And I think as I've grown and developed and, entered my 30s and got deeper into them, and I wanted to talk about different things. I wanted to talk about, within 5 years, what it means when our friends are our family, and also, how our lives can diverge from each other, and how we keep choosing each other when we're making really different choices in our careers and our personal lives. And with One Italian Summer, it's like, what does it mean that our parents get older, that they won't be here anymore? What does it mean to think about a future without them? And then my new novel, Expiration Dates, is really about the search for love. I was single for quite a long time. I just got married, and I wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about what it feels like to be single and searching in your 30s, and to wonder if that person is out there, and what that even means. So I think that I would imagine, I don't know, but I think my books will probably continue to reflect where I am in my life, because it's what I really want to talk about, and it's what I can authentically share. And also, I love that relationship with my readers. I love that when I go out on a new book tour, I can talk about where I'm at or where I have just been. And it's really a nice evolution. So
It's good that you are open about those things, because there are plenty of writers who are like, no, there's no connection to me. It's just fiction. So it makes the story and the characters have so much more depth when you can add that.
yeah, I mean, Joan Didion, I mean, a lot of authors have said this, but I attribute it to her. Used to say, I write to figure out how I feel about my life. And I think that that's so true. It's so true. I write, and I rarely write books starting from a place of like, okay, I have this part of my life figured out. No, I write because it's something that I'm wanting to explore. There are questions I'm wanting to ask. There are answers that I'm needing. And my writing process is part of my living process.
Mm-hmm. So when you start writing then, because you said you draft, you write so quickly, 3 to 4 months, do you then already know the ending?
Usually when I start a book, I will have, like, when I actually start writing. So I figured out now what this book is about, and um and who best to tell this story, like who's the protagonist going to be, and all of those things. Usually I'll sit down and I'll make kind of like a beat sheet. I don't really make an outline, but I'll make a list maybe of like 20 to 30 plot points, like big things that I think I need to hit in order to make this book like the well-rounded version that I think it needs to be. And I will generally have an idea of the ending. I don't always, like, both in One Italian Summer and Expiration Dates, there were two ways that it could have gone. And I wasn't really sure until I got there. I will have an idea. I guess the best way I could say it is I'll have an idea of the message that I want to leave at the end. Not in a preachy way. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. I have a real clear idea of how I want this character to grow. And so then, rating through that growth and how it develops over the course of the book, sometimes that growth reflects in a different choice than I thought she would make at the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes just from like a plot perspective, it will look a little bit different than when I started out thinking it was going to be.
Okay. So we have people wondering then about your process over the years. Amy at Wallingford Public Library says, has your writing changed at all over the course of your career?
Yes, I would say when I first started off writing young adult, I didn't write books as quickly as I wrote One Italian Summer and In 5 Years and Expiration Dates. I was also, juggling a lot of different things in my life, and I was working a little bit more consistently in Hollywood. I sold Famous in Love as a television show, and so I was working on that for about 4 years, I would say, right in the middle of my career. And I actually wrote my first adult novel, which is a book called The Dinner List. It's about a woman who shows up to her 30th birthday dinner, and it's that dinner. If you could have dinner with any 5 people, living or dead, who would they be? So like Audrey Hepburn's at the table, and her father who passed away when she was young. And anyway, but I wrote the first 100 pages of that book, and then I put them in a drawer, and I immediately went to Los Angeles and I started working on this TV show. And then it was 3 years later, and I came back to it and I finished it, and that became my first adult novel. So every book has looked a little bit different. Like In 5 Years was, ironically, even though it's a very New York book, it was the first book that I wrote the majority of in Los Angeles, and that showed me, okay, I think I could maybe live somewhere that isn't Manhattan. And One Italian Summer, I wrote in the depths of COVID. I wrote that book from April to June of 2020, and just sort of trying to project myself anywhere but the 4 walls of my house. And I got to be in Italy for that period of time. So every book feels different to me, but I would say that over time, I think I've gotten comfortable with my writing process. And I think one of the biggest things I had to get comfortable with was the fact that for me, my writing process doesn't involve writing all of the time. And so what does it mean that I have many months out of the year when I'm focusing on other areas of my career, where I'm editing, where I may be working on the screenplay versions of some of these books? And how do I trust that I'll be able to come back to my process and come back to writing when I need to? So I think hopefully I've gotten, I think I've just gotten to trust my process a little bit more as I've gone on. And even now I said, like, it's changing. It's changing because I'm married now, and because my life looks different, and because just falling sort of like into a hole for 3 months and just working around the clock is not really what's happening in my life. My life looks a little bit more holistic than it used to, in a beautiful way. But I feel like I've writing and I have this really nice symbiotic relationship now where I feel like I trust it and it trusts me. And this sounds really hokey, but I feel like we've made this agreement to just not abandon each other. And so it looks different book over book and year over year, but I know that I'll keep coming back to it. So
You mentioned in in 5 years you wrote the majority of it in LA, even though you the book is based primarily in New York. And you were like, yeah, I could really live. You found yourself thinking you could really live there. Your
mhm.
character did the same thing in that book. Your main character, Danny. And so it reminded me of that when she had to go on a work trip to LA, and she's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yes. You can really chart my journey to discovering that Los Angeles wasn't the worst place in the world over the course of my adult novels. In the dinner list, she's like, I can't believe anybody lives in LA. How terrible. And then yes, in 5 years, she sort of spends this week there and it's like maybe. And then One Italian Summer, she lives in Los Angeles. And so
Uh-huh.
and Expiration Dates is I mean, One Italian Summer is an Italy book and Expiration Dates is a very Los Angeles book. So that's definitely my place evolution. But I think it takes, it took me about I think 5 years of living in New York to feel like I could really write it. And I remember my first novel that was set in New York was a book called The Edge of Falling, which was my second young adult novel. And I was so excited because I felt like, oh, I really understand what this city is. Like I can write this city now. And then I became nervous because it felt like not only could I write that city, but that maybe Manhattan was like the hot spot of my writing. Like I think about it in terms of like a volcano, and that all of like the juice of my creativity just lived in that place, and that I might want to live in other places. Life might take me to other places, but I wouldn't be able to write in them because the writing came from New York. So In 5 years was a really pivotal book for me. I mean, for many reasons, it was really the book that changed my life, quite frankly. But one of them was that it taught me that I could write about a place not being in a place, and that writing, actually, like the hotspot of writing is me. Like it lives in me and I carry it wherever I go. And it's not coming from somewhere in particular. So that was a big deal.
Well, and likewise with One Italian Summer, you said it was COVID, you couldn't go anywhere, but you leave at the end of that book these beautiful emails to the manager at Hotel Poseidon.
That's right.
And how much you loved the place was absolutely evident in the book.
It's such a special place. It's such a special hotel. So What Italian Summer takes place predominantly at this hotel, the Hotel Poseidon in Positano, Italy. And I was lucky enough to go there in 2019. And then I wrote the book in 2020 about it. And it's a family run business for a few generations. And one of the managers, Liliana, who is the daughter of sort of the second generation owners, and I just struck up a really nice friendship. And so there are emails in the back, as you said, of the book between the two of us in like April, I think, of 2020, me asking her questions and saying I would like to write about this place. And one really, really cool thing is I got to go back there the summer of 2022. And it was so special to go back when the book had just come out. One Italian Summer came out in March of 2022. And so it was so fun to get to go back and to meet so many readers who were taking that journey with their moms or, their friends or by themselves. And it was amazing. It was a very special experience. So yeah, Hotel Poseidon really, really lives in my heart. If anyone ever wants to take a vacation, I can't recommend it enough.
I feel like after reading One Italian Summer, if you've read that book, you have to go there at some point.
Like a pilgrimage.
Yes. Yeah. Go to all the spots that you talk about.
Yeah. They're all real. They're all real.
And I'm sure that there are people out there doing that already.
It was really sweet when I went there last summer. I got to meet a lot of people who were kind of on their own little One Italian Summer journey, and we're like, oh, I read about this place in the book and I wanted to check it out. And
that's awesome.
It was so
did they
fun.
recognize you, or did you see them with the book? Like I
saw them in the book. A lot of people had the book with them, and that was special. And so I was like, just being a total weirdo, being like, I read that.
No, that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, it was very fun. It was very
So Pat is asking, where do you get your ideas for your books? And you've talked about how you develop the storyline after you've sat with an idea, but are you just at brunch and it pops into your head? I mean, how do you kind of curate these ideas?
kind of. I mean, it is sort of like that. I think that there are times in which my brain is open to a new idea and times in which my brain is not. So, for most of the time, my brain is not open to a new idea because I'm either working on drafting a book, working on editing a book, or working on promoting a book. Like I'm about to shift over from drafting this book to now really focusing on expiration dates and putting it out into the world and building this tour and and supporting it and making sure that it gets to readers. So most of the time my brain is not necessarily open to a new idea, but there comes a moment where I'm like, I start to feel the itch a little bit. I'm like, I want to be turning on something new. And usually I will say, I actually think I'm sort of realizing this in real time. So forgive me if this isn't the most eloquent answer, but I think that there's often something like a theme that I'm really wanting to talk about and explore. I personally, and for anyone who is familiar with my work, this is not a surprise. I really am interested in the dialogue between fate and free will. How much is in our control and how much is going to happen regardless of what we do and the choices that we make. Like that dichotomy is the fundamental question of human existence that I am most caught up with. And so all of my work in a way is reflective of that because it's the thing that I'm always wrestling with. But there will be some central question that I'm really wanting to explore. Like I for a really long time wanted to write a mother-daughter love story. I loved Gilmore Girls so much. I love my mother so much. And also it's complicated. Forgive me, sorry. It's complicated to have a mother. It's complicated to be a mother. It's complicated to be the adult daughter of a mother. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to create a story for that space. And so a lot of times my ideas will come out of, and with expiration dates, for a really long time, I want to talk about the search for love. I want to talk about what it means to be single and to be looking. And then the concept kind of came to me after that. So I think that it's first me saying I would like to write about a particular area of life, of my life, that comes first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You brought up kind of this dialogue and dichotomy between fate and free will.
Mhm.
And I find it especially interesting because of the magical realism that you kind of write into your books. So it makes me wonder if you can ever really reconcile the two, especially if or when unintentional magic takes place. It seems like it eliminates free will.
Well, I mean, listen, we'll never know, right? Like we'll never know how much we control and how much we don't. Maybe at some point when we're like Stardust, we will get that information. But as long as we're here in our human experience, we won't know. And the magic for me, I mean, I really like the way that it allows me to cut to the quick of a story. So I think this is like a really clear example. So I'll talk about One Italian Summer, but this is a book about a woman who is, grieving the loss of her mother, decides to go to Italy, a place that was, really important to her mom when her mom was a young woman. And she ends up meeting her mom when her mom was 30 and they spend the summer together as two young women, like I said. And so you could write a story about a young woman who goes to Italy, who goes to Positano, who goes to this place that meant so much to her mom, and she could meet people that her mom knew, and she could discover letters that her mom wrote. And that could be a great book. But for me, it's more interesting to just meet mom. Like I'm not that interested in all of that secondary sort of like discovery. I just want to have the experience of actually getting to know mom. And so I find that the magic just allows me to like get into the heart of the story that I'm trying to tell more efficiently than I would be able to without it.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it also makes for a much more interesting story, and it transports you. Um, Karen is saying, how did you come to use time travel as a way to tell stories you wanted to tell? And I'd never thought of it like that. Of all of your books that I've read, I'm like, oh, it's, kind of magical realism, but it is time travel in a way.
Yeah, it is. It is time travel in a way. I also don't really think about it that way. Um, because I'm not like a sci-fi person. I'm not.
Yeah.
So when I start thinking about time travel, I'm like, oh, there are all these rules that I'm just not really that interested in. For me, it's really about the heart of the story. And I also like my goals always with my books are to drop this piece of magic and then have the reader accept it as quickly as possible. Like, it is not interesting to me to try to make a bunch of rules for why this is or raise a lot of questions. It's like, this thing has just happened and now we're going to just keep on as if it were any other normal world. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one about time travel. Because I don't really consider them to be that way, even though you're absolutely right. They are.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I didn't think of it that way at all until Karen asked that question. Um, so Linda is saying, how do you decide on the settings for your books? I know we talked about, you living in New York and you living in LA or having gone to Italy and loved it. But when you're developing that plot line and that setting, is that part of it as you're developing that story, or is it just the storyline that you start with?
Yeah. I think the honest answer is that I was so deeply in love with New York City when I lived there that when I went to write, it was everywhere in my books. The sensation of that city, of what it felt like to live there, of what it felt like to be young there and, fall in love there and eat there and party there and be heartbroken there and lose people there. Like, I was just so enamored of it that it came out the pores of my books,
Mm.
specifically The Dinner List and In 5 Years. And so once I had kind of established that, I found that this love of place, this real rich texture of place, started to feel really organic to how I write. And so when I went to write One Italian Summer, it seemed really obvious. Like, I knew I wanted to set this book in Italy because it was a place that my own mom spent a summer there when she was 20 years old and fell in love with this man named Ramo. And so there was our own story for that inspired this book. And so I knew I wanted to take place in Italy. And you can't write about Italy without writing about place.
Yeah.
It's just like, it would be pointless. Like, you can't write about Italy and not, describe the light there or a bowl of pasta or like the perfect glass of wine. It's part of it. And so that felt really organic. And then, I've really fallen in love with Los Angeles and with a different kind of life here. And so I'm excited to share that with people in Expiration Dates and for them to get to see a little bit of my LA.
Mhm.
So I think it really started with New York, and now it's just part of what I do.
I had a friend that also read Expiration Dates early, and she said that she just moved away from LA about a year ago, and so she said it completely transported her back. She
Oh,
yeah, she loved it.
that's so nice. Where'd she move to?
She moved
Somewhere.
to upstate New York.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Very different.
yeah,
Okay.
very different.
Very different. Yeah.
Quite a few acres, lots of snow.
Nice. Nice. Minus the snow. I can't handle cold anymore.
I'm in New Orleans, and I still I look forward to the cold every year.
Do you?
I'm from the Midwest, and I just have
Okay.
not gotten used to the heat. I've been here
Okay.
for 10 years now, and it's just not happening.
Okay. I mean, I get it. It's different for everybody, but the fantasy of cold, I really have. Like, the fantasy of snow and sort of like that, like, big winter jacket and the big scarf, and then it immediately drops below 65 degrees, and I'm like, I cannot handle this.
Yeah,
Get me out of here. So,
I am done. So Maggie is saying, how do you balance plot with character development?
That's a good question. That's a very good question, Maggie. Plot with character development. Well, I mean, I think for me, the most important thing about a story is does the voice feel authentic? Like, is this true? Is this honest? And I think you need to be asking yourself that question at every turn. Like, is this true? Is this honest? And then I think the plot, I mean, listen, I think that if you are writing an authentic character, the plot will kind of come. I have to say I don't really focus on the plot too much in my books. It is a little bit secondary.
Okay.
It's just the business that someone has to go through to become who it is they need to be. And so I think that excuse me, I think if you're really focused on character and you're focused on the evolution of that character and where you want that character to get to, the plot will come, like the plot will present itself, because the plot's necessary for that growth. But I for me, it's character first.
Okay. And do you base those characters in people that you know? I know sometimes your main characters kind of reflect who you are. And One Italian Summer was, kind of based on your own mother-daughter relationship. But do you base any of the other characters on people that you know?
No, I mean, I will say, like, no one is ever based on anybody, but sometimes the relationships between characters are based on relationships in real life. So I can't say that, that Bella or that Eric or that, that any of my characters are based off of any people in my life, but sometimes a particular relationship will be based off of a relationship in my own life.
Mhm.
If that makes sense. And I think that all of my characters, both my protagonists and also not, are sort of a facet of me. They're not me, but they have something in common with me because again, they're like the externalization of this question that I'm asking in my own life. And I think people sometimes think that means that the things that have happened in my book I've experienced specifically, and it's not that. It's more thematic than that. It's more sort of bird's eye than that. The plots and all the minutia of these books are entirely fictional. They belong to these characters. But a lot of the questions are my own.
Okay. So you Expiration Dates is your first romantic love book. And
Show you because now it's I'm just realizing that it's really going with these flowers.
Oh, yes. Yeah, perfect.
So I just needed that visual. But yeah.
And so I heard this story that you were writing the book and you're like, by the end of this book, I'm going to find my one. Is that how it ended up being?
Well, the end of my acknowledgments, so at the end of all of my acknowledgments of my book, I write a note to my readers. It started with a dinner list. And when I sat down to write Expiration Dates, I wrote my editor. And I said to my editor, like, I really want to write the search for love, about the search for love. And I think if I write the honest version of this, I think if I really tell the truth about this story, this is like the last thing I need to do before I can meet him. I was like, I really think that he'll be there at the end of this book. And yeah, I finished Expiration Dates. I met my husband like 3 months later. So
you put it out there into the universe.
I put it out there into the universe. For a really long time, I wanted to write about this. I wanted to write about looking for love. I wanted to write about, just the different relationships you have, what you learn about yourself, how like freeing and exciting it is to be single, and also how lonely it can be, all of those things. And, but I didn't know how it ended. I didn't really know what I was going to, like, what I was trying to say is the point that like you end up meeting somebody that's nothing like who you thought you would end up with. And that's what the message is. Or is it that like, actually this idea you have in your heart, like hold on to it because like someday it's all going to work out the way you thought it was if you just don't settle. Or like, I didn't know what the truth was. And so I, for so many years, felt like I wasn't ready to write it because I didn't know how it ended. And I don't know what prompted me to think that I was, but I was like, I don't know how it ends. And I didn't. During writing Expiration Dates, I really didn't. And you'll see in reading it, it will be very obvious to you that there are a few ways that this book could end. And I didn't know how it was going to end until I got there. But I really like being married. I'm very happy to be married.
So you met your husband when you were 33?
No, I was 37. I was just about to be 37.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was 33. I had that in my mind. I even marked this passage in 5 years, where it was kind of like you were a soothsayer when you wrote that, because there was this part where you write, my birthday next week, October 21st, 33. Your magic year, Bella told me, your year of miracles.
Yeah.
But I was 5 years off. Sorry.
Yeah. I love, 33 is my, I mean, I think that it is for a lot of people, but it's like my magic number with my mom. Like it's our little sign. Like if we look at the clock or we see it written somewhere or something, it's a little universal sign. So it's not surprising to me that you would think 33, because I love the number 33, but I was not 33. And yeah, and I really didn't know. I sort of was open to what my life might look like. I didn't know if it was necessarily going to involve the traditional route that I really thought that maybe I was meant for, and really in my heart wanted. Like my parents have been excuse me, have been married for over 40 years. They have such a beautiful relationship. They really are so deeply in love, and I always saw that reflected in my life, and I really wanted it for myself. I wanted a lasting relationship. I wanted a lasting partner. I wanted a family in that way, but I didn't really know if it was going to happen in the way that I had seen. And so, it would have been great had it not. And it was. I don't actually need to speculate on that, because I got to experience it for so many years, and there was so much I loved about being single, and there was so much I got to give my own life, like my Rebecca life and my writing life, that I might not have had I met him earlier. There were so many questions that in asking led me to the books that really did change my life and change my career, and I feel really grateful for that. And I think part of what I'm sitting with now in this next phase of my work is what does it mean now to have the thing? What does it mean that not every question now is, how is life going to turn out? Who is he going to be? What is it going to look like? But really, what does it mean that it's here? And now what? And so that, I think, is the fundamental part of my writing process that's changing, is that it's not all what's ahead. Now it's really talking about how to be with what's here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you write now that you're married, and see that kind of evolution take place in your writing. It's exciting.
Thank you.
So Yafa is asking, are there any relationships you wished you would have known the expiration date of in advance?
Oh yeah. I mean, I found myself very jealous of Daphne as the protagonist of Expiration Dates while I was writing it, because I mean, it would have been so freeing. I feel like to know there were so many relationships that I think I tried to make the thing, because there was enough there. And I think had the universe just said 3 months, I would have been like, great, let's have fun. I mean, there's a real freedom in that. And then, of course, it's complicated. There would be no book if it wasn't. So I don't get into that. You can read it. But yes, of course. I would have loved to know the expiration dates to some relationships, for sure.
Actually, Expiration Dates is a very clear kind of exploration of fate and free will.
Yes.
The entire time I was reading it, I was like, well, but what if you just ignored it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it is. It is.
So we've received so many questions asking you for advice on love and romance. So just kind of carte blanche, having written your first romantic focused love story and now literally living in your own happily ever after. What do you want readers to know about finding love?
Um, I will say, I mean, I think I can only speak about my own experience. And I think that I thought for so many years that meeting him would be like the grand crescendo end of my single years. Um, but meeting him was not at all the ending of that. Like that was its own thing. Meeting him was just the start of something else entirely, something very, very different than what came before. And I think as much as you can, just be present in your life, trust the timing of your life. That's my favorite thing to say. I really believe it. I tried to live by it. Someday, regardless of whether, you meet the person you want to be with for 10 years or 50 years or 10 minutes, life changes because that's what life does. It always changes. And so I think as much as we can see the beauty in the moment that we're in and just be present in the moment that we're in and to understand that what is meant for us is coming. It's easier said than done, but it is the best way to strive to live.
It's great advice. Jenna is saying, you mentioned you write to see how you feel about your life and to get answers when you have questions. What is the biggest lesson you've learned from your books or from the characters you've written?
That's really good. The biggest lesson I've learned from my books. I mean, I really should take my own advice more. To be clear, like it's very easy to like write this and to sit here, but I have my own moments of doubt and insecurity and anxiety about how things are going to be and how they're going to turn out and whether they're going to be okay. I think that, I think all my books, I like to say that I like a happy ending, but not a finished ending. I think all my books resolve in some way a little bit open-ended. And I think that that's one thing that just like my books, but maybe writing in general has taught me like no feeling is, excuse me, no feeling is final, that there's always something else ahead, something new to wrestle with, something new to like overcome, something new to bask in. And I try to have that perspective a little bit, that like this too shall pass, good, bad, ugly, joyful, all of it, this too shall pass. And so I put these protagonists sometimes through like really hard and terrible things, and that can be scary, and I care for them, and sometimes I will feel bad about that in some way. And so I remind myself that this too shall pass, and not everything is this moment.
Mm-hmm. I think the things that you put your characters through help the readers connect to them on such a real level, because it's fun to read that everything is all right, but not all the time. You want to be able to connect to the real world, and there are things happening to people.
Yes.
There are sometimes bad things happening to people. So I appreciate when you write like that.
Thank you. That's really that's lovely. That's lovely to say and lovely to hear. Yeah, I do like, ultimately I really want my books to make people feel, and specifically to make people feel less alone. Like that's why I read, and it's really why I write too. I write in a way that's like, do you also, like I put something down on paper and it's like I'm sliding it across the table and saying like, does this resonate? Do you feel this too? And it's amazing. It's indescribable when the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sandra is saying, any tips on writing love story or love scenes? Sorry.
Oh, any tips on writing love scenes? I mean, they're just fun, a little bit of fantasy, I mean, Expiration Dates definitely has more than my previous novels. As well it should. I mean, it's a book about dating, but I think that, I don't know. I think just getting into the fantasy of it, I think love scenes can be really fun. I remember I used to write young adult, and I always found it so, like, my introduction to love scenes in novels was through writing young adult, and it was just like, it felt so wrong to be writing about 17-year-olds, like,
Yeah.
getting, I don't need to get into detail or use the real word. There's too many people watching here tonight, but I always felt kind of creepy about that. Like, I didn't love it. I was like, why? My voice does not belong here. Like, this is not. But there is something really freeing about writing about women exploring their sexuality in some way and having different experiences that's fun. So I think, like, get into the fantasy of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So you've already had a TV adaptation of one of your books, but you have some in the works as well, right?
Yes, I do. Both One Italian Summer and In 5 Years are in development to be movies. Knock on wood, we've had a lot of, it's been tricky in Hollywood the last year because we had two strikes. We had a writer strike and an actor strike. And so things are kind of just like getting back after the new year. So we'll see how that goes. And it's a long road. I mean, listen, I sold Rosalind, When You Were Mine, my first book. I think I sold the film rights in 2010, and that movie got made in 2022. So it can take a really, really long time if it happens at all. So, but those two are in development for film, and I'm feeling positive and excited about that. I am always wrestling with an adaptation of The Dinner List. It's a little bit like my white whale. Like, I just can't totally figure out how to crack it, but I want to tell that story, and I think it would make a great film. So I'm working on that. Yeah, and then starting to explore what Expiration Dates wants to be in a different medium.
Hmm.
It's interesting doing both screenwriting and now, working on a lot of the adaptations of my books, because you really have to, like, this is a terrible thing to say, but I like to say it's like telling the same story again but worse, because the book is the thing I really want it to be, and then I have to, like, throw that out and start again, but make it less good because there's fewer pages and words and less resources available to you. And so anyway, it's a really different medium, and frankly, it's a medium that I have less experience in, and so I'm enjoying seeing how that goes. But yes, hopefully we'll have some more adaptation news this year.
So for both In 5 Years and One Italian Summer, you wrote the film adaptation?
For one of them, I did. For the other, I did not.
Okay. And then past that, do you have a lot of involvement in the making of them?
I do. I'm a producer on both films, so I'm part of the team, and we're in early stages yet, but yes, I will be involved in all of the decisions on casting and director and everything that's knock on wood to come.
Mhm. Okay. Laura is asking, what is up and coming for you? You said you're in draft mode of something right now, right?
I'm in draft mode on something, but really, what's up and coming for me is getting to start talking about expiration dates. The book comes out March 19th. And I will be announcing, I think probably in the next few weeks, my book tour and where I'm going to go. And it's all going to be about that for the foreseeable future. So I am drafting and working on something. There will be a new book for me, but probably not a lot of information on that this year. It will really be about talking about expiration dates, which I'm very, very excited to do. I think the book tour hopefully is going to have, like, a little bit of a girls' night out vibe. I really, I want it to feel really just like celebratory and fun, and a place where we can share our stories and talk about all those things. So
And you're going on the road?
I'm going on the road. Yes.
How many cities?
I think I'm doing about 10 in person. So there will be ample opportunity to come and see me. This is my biggest in-person tour that I've done thus far.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm
Yeah.
really excited. I'm really excited. So stay tuned on my Instagram. I'll be announcing that in the next few weeks. And so I hope I see a lot of you out there.
That's really exciting. I was lucky enough to read Expiration Dates early, and it's such a good book. So I'm glad that we got to talk a little bit about it here tonight. I didn't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to give away everything, but yeah, it's a must read for sure.
Thank you, Ren. Thank you so much.
Of
So nice.
course. Catherine just asked, your books always have such beautiful covers. Are you involved or consulted in any way in the development of the artwork and design?
I am. That's so nice. I'm so proud of our covers. I made my little stack today. In 5 years, this cover, excuse me, this cover took us so long to come up with. And I'm so glad that we waited and landed on the exact right thing, because the In 5 Years cover really sort of like set the like scene for how our covers go now, because it's actually our designer Lei Wan, her like beautiful handwriting that she first did on In 5 Years and now has done on all of the subsequent books. And so the covers really they have that sort of like that font that's so beautiful. And then, we want them to be representative of place, because like we talked about, place is so important in my books, like the actual setting for where this book takes place, like what sort of adventure you're going to go on through reading it. And yeah, thank you. I love that you love them, because I really love them too. I love our covers.
Well, they're super eye-catching too. So even if nobody's ever read a Rebecca Serle book, then like the cover, walking through the bookstore, you're going to be like, what is that? I would pick it up and read it.
That's it. I know this one turned out really fun.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Very sort of like, yeah, I like it. I'm really loving the floral contrast here.
I didn't notice that when you put those there before we went live.
I didn't either, but it worked out.
Yeah. So the question that I love to end on for everybody is, what is a book or books that you're reading right now that you feel like everybody must run to the library and check out? And maybe even like your favorite authors. It doesn't have to be anything recent. It can be whatever your heart desires.
I was saying, we were talking about this before we went live, and I was saying it's the one question that everyone asks in every interview, and I immediately forget anything I've ever written in my entire life. I feel like people can relate to this. Like for those who read, I feel like people ask, what are you reading? And you just immediately forget. But I'm reading, I took it out with me in case I was asked. I'm reading Erasure by Percival Everett. It's the book that American Fiction is based off of, and I'm really loving it. I'm not quite finished. I'm almost finished. I started a book club in 2023. I got married in 2023, so I cannot say it was the best thing I did in 2023. However, it was one of the top 5. I absolutely love being in book club. And so this is our book for this month. We meet next Monday. I'm going to finish it. I'm loving it. I can't wait to see the movie. And I would say my favorite book of last year was Yellowface. I don't know if you read it. Did you read it?
I haven't yet, but I am interviewing Rebecca Quang in May. So
amazing.
I'm reading it soon. Yeah.
She is just, this book is incredible. I was in such a reading slump, and it's the thing that I recommend to anyone who's like, I don't really know, what to read. I'm like, kind of like, I'm not really loving anything right now. Like, it will rip you out of the slump. Ooh. Like, that book is written with so much energy. It's such a force, and I loved it. So
super excited. Everybody run and check that out. Definitely. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much. I had such a good time talking to you for the last hour. I learned so much. So just truly thank you for being here.
Thank you. Back at you. I had a great time, and thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for hosting this incredible series. It's really amazing, and so how fun.
It's my pleasure. I also want to extend a huge thank you, of course, to our viewers for tuning in, because without your support, none of this would be possible. So thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. I do want to remind you that below the live stream video, in the Rate This Program tab, you can find a link to the resources area, which contains a pre-order link to Rebecca's forthcoming title, Expiration Dates. We look forward to seeing you all on January 23rd when we talk to Rajiv Nagayach about elder law and retirement pitfalls, and again on January 30th when we chat with New York Times bestselling author and endocrinologist Dr. Robert Lustig about metabolic health. I am Brandon Adler, and thank you for